presentation on baseball. So baseball is a bat and ball game played between two teams of 9. It's a very well-known sport in the United States as well as many other countries. It's played year-round, has many different levels of organization. The goal is essentially for the offense to score runs by getting hits, and the defense's goal is to stop the offense from scoring the run by achieving 3 outs. Outs come in many ways, such as strike out, pop out, ground out, any way that the batter does not reach the base after they hit. The team switch field from in the field to the batter, as vice versa, every 3 outs. Batters are given 3 strikes or 4 balls. After 3 strikes, that would be a strikeout, and 4 balls would be a walk. Your goal is to get from first, second, third, all the way to home base. And baseball is played for 9 innings. It usually lasts around 3 hours. The team with the most runs at the end wins. Sometimes it's a little different, shorter, longer. It depends on if it goes into extra innings. So here's a couple pictures of baseball. We'll move down into the developmental level chart. So baseball's got many different levels. If you really got into it, you'd go from T-ball, Little League, blah, 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 all the way up until professional, which you would have single A, double A, triple A, then the pros. I broke it down a little bit shorter to start with the Little League, which is 7 to 12, ethnicity, all the way through. Positionally, same all the way through left, right, center, first, second, third base, pitcher and catcher. Usually in Little League, this isn't always true, but usually the outfielders are the slow, more unathletic kids, the ones that aren't as skilled. Kids don't really hit the ball as far in Little League. That's why these kids in the outfield aren't as skilled, because that's usually where you put these kids that don't really know their position yet. Infielder is usually the most talented. I put on here that the pitcher is usually the coach's kid. Isn't always the case, but a lot of times. The catcher is usually the bigger kid. That's stereotypical, but a lot of times the catcher is the bigger kid, power kid. But as you move to middle school, 12 to 14, kids mature. They start getting a little bit better. On to travel ball, you usually get your more specialized positions. So you're not playing everywhere on the field. You usually pick one position to play. And usually the outfielders are athletic and fast now because people can hit the ball further. Infielders are still very skilled. Pitchers, they're getting stronger. Usually are tall kids, sometimes stocky. They have to generate a lot of power with their legs. Usually have big legs. Catchers, still sometimes the bigger kids. I mean, even if you look in the pros today, it's the bigger kids that are playing catcher. Travel ball takes you from 8 to 18, in which you would then start playing JV, varsity. Most kids that are playing at these levels are playing travel ball and varsity. That means they're playing year-round. Like I said, the developmental levels are pretty much the same for these kids because they're playing year-round, all the same sport. Usually it starts to change around college. You pretty much have one specific position in college, whereas in high school you could be the third baseman and then you go play the outfield or go play catcher or pitcher. But in college you usually have one position and that's what you play, pitcher, catcher, whatever it is. And on to professional, it's the same thing. Usually second basemen don't play outfield. Happens, but usually it doesn't happen that way. You usually have one position and that's where you get picked up on that team for. So we're going to go into my first article. It was called "The Whole Body and Segmental Muscle Volume Are Associated with Ball Velocity in High School Pitchers," was the name of the article. So their method here was they wanted to examine relationships between pitching ball velocity and segmental and whole body muscle volume. They chose 47 high school pitchers from Japan to do this study. They had 40 right-handed and 7 left-handed kids. They measured they got their age, their stature, the mass, baseball experience, maximal pitch velocity, which they chose 3 max efforts to get this. As a result, they found all had at least 5 years experience with baseball. They were aged 15 to 17 years old. Stature was around 168 centimeters to 179. Body mass 58 kilograms to 72 kilograms, and their maximal pitch velocity, which I found this surprising, was 92 to 134 kilometers per hour, which correlates to 57 to 83 miles per hour. And I just found it pretty surprising that there was high school pitchers only pitching 57 miles per hour. Sometimes these kids throw different types of pitches, and that's why. But once again just was a little surprising. So what they found was muscle volume of the pitcher's dominant arm was larger than the non-dominant arm, which is pretty self-explanatory. But the muscle volume in the dominant leg had no difference from that of the non-dominant leg, which is I found a little weird because you usually generate a lot of your power from your legs, and if you're a right-handed pitcher, you push off of your right leg, so I would have thought that maybe there would be more muscle volume in that leg. But according to the study, there was the same in each. So whole body muscle volume and segmental muscle volume are correlated with the ball velocity. The muscle volume for both lower legs and the dominant side for the upper leg, upper arm, and forearm do correlate with ball velocity. Trunk muscle velocity does not correlate with the ball velocity. Lastly, there were no significant differences in the variables between right and left-handed pitchers. So didn't matter if you were right or left, pretty much the numbers stayed the same. And this study focuses on Newell's individual structure because the article goes into detail about their height and their weight and how this correlates to how fast they can throw the ball. I believe this study would be good for recruiters, coaches. They can look at this development, or they can look at this to develop their philosophy of what range of muscle volume they want their pitchers to have. Also, coaches, trainers, they can develop training programs to increase their athletes' muscle volume, and also it gives the pitchers, even the players, an insight of what they need to do to increase their speed of their pitches. So, I need more muscle volume in this part of my body. This is how I need to do to get there. For the normative data, the kids in this study were 45 in the 45th percentile of the normative data, and they were in height, and in weight they were in the 30th percentile. So there's the citation for this in the PDF article. So now we move on to Article 2. This was the article I found very, very amusing. I kind of correlated with it a lot, but it was the differences in batted ball speed with wood and aluminum bats. It's called a batting cage study. So the method was, you want to find the differences in performance of wood and metal bats measured as a function of batted ball speed. They chose 19 male baseball players from ages 17 to 39. They had 9 professionals, 6 NCAA college players, and 4 were high school players. And these high school players were players that were being recruited to play college, so they didn't just go out and choose any high school player. They chose 5 aluminum bats and 2 wood bats. Of these bats, they had 6 models of each. That way they weren't using the same bat every time. They would use a new one, then the next one, then the next one, then go on to the next person. They used a new baseball every time. The baseball was wrapped in reflective tape for motion tracking. As a result, they got a total of 1,079 pitches. Of these, only 538 were hits. The remaining were foul balls, strikes, pop-outs, anything that didn't go into play. They just excluded it out. So on average, between both the metal and the wood, the professionals were hitting around 105.0 plus or minus 1.6 miles per hour. College athletes, the 6 college players were batting 103.1 plus or minus 2.1 miles per hour. And the high schoolers were 99.6 plus or minus 1.7. And as you can see, there's not too much a difference there. I think a little gradual increase of about 3 miles per hour to each level. So what they found, metal bats had more hits at higher batted ball speeds than did the wood bats, is one thing they found, which was what you would assume. Only 5% of the wood bats exceeded 97 miles per hour. Only 5%, 97 miles per hour. And then while 5% on just metal bat 2, M2 is metal bat 2, if you go into the first page of this, you can look at the article and pull up the picture, and it goes into detail the wooden bat 1, wooden bat 2, metal bat 1, and all that. You can see all those numbers, but it was exceeding speeds of over 106 miles per hour. So you can see it's a pretty good significant increase in batted ball speed from the metal to the wood bat. Anyways, the batted ball speed significantly increased also with the increased skill level. As you can see, like I said, 99.6 in the high school, up to 103, up to 105. So this study, it can help anyone in the baseball world, really, coaches and players. For players, it tells you what you need to do to train if you want to be in the pros. what you're going to train, how you're going to train. For me, this stuck out because the author went into detail a lot about how, why do we train with one certain bat, but then once we're at the highest level, we move to a wooden bat. And I thought it was very interesting because I've never thought about that. And it's like, why do you start off on an 8-foot goal in basketball and move to a 10-foot goal? Why do you use a smaller ball in football in younger leagues and then move to a bigger football, as well as a smaller basketball? Why don't we train from the beginning with the way that we're going to end up? So why don't we, if we're batting with a wood bat at the highest level, why aren't we doing that at the lowest level to train? So like I said, this would really, to me, if I was a big-time baseball player when I was young, I wanted to play professionally, I would go ahead, if I knew this information, I would go ahead and start at a young age at practicing batting with a wooden bat. Obviously not in a game because that would be illegal unless you were in a wooden bat league, but just training with it, gaining power, getting the feel of the wooden bat. That way, once I got there, if I achieved that level of professionalism, I would, already be hitting the ball at bigger speeds than everybody else. So I'd be training myself to bat with the wooden bats. So, he brought up a good argument of why do we start with metal bats? Why don't we start with wooden bats? Or why do we start with metal bats and not finish with wooden bats? Because a lot of the reason we switched to wooden bats in the pros is because the pros essentially hit the ball a lot harder, a lot more home runs, a lot more, it could be injury because a lot less reaction time in the field, which would be a whole different study. But a lot less reaction time in the field. But if you look at the numbers, it's not that much of an increase in batted ball speed from the college to the pros. So why can the college players do it but not the pros? So it's something to think about, really, for everyone. But it's just something that stuck out to me. I thought it was a very good article. Definitely would do some more research on this. But this study relates to Newell's task structure because it focuses on using different equipment to perform the type of goals, so wooden bat, metal bat, things like that to perform the goal. I couldn't find anything on normative data that didn't do anything with height and weight. I think that would be one way you could improve this study, definitely, is to get a group of this height, this weight, or a group of first basemen, second basemen, and see where their numbers stand up to outfielders. But going into the height and weight, and I think that would be pretty crucial for this type of study, and I think that would be something this author would, expand on maybe in the future. This is the reference and the PDF file, and that is all I have.